First-time wrestler in my family. We never really had anyone wrestling, so everything that we've done to this point has kind of been like trial and error. In 8th grade, I didn't like wrestling. I didn't want to do it. I wasn't that good at it. I would work so hard, but I couldn't win a tournament. Like I couldn't for the life of me win a tournament. I had no idea what the problem was.
Valerie Solerio, you are a tough individual to pin down, no pun intended on it, but huge superstar in this area. I'll list a couple of the accolades and you'll get into it because that wastes so much time with all of them. Fargo champion, first ever FHSAA women's champion, chasing the first ever women's PA championship, and just recently Iowa Hawkeye commit. How are you doing, Valerie Solerio?
Well, I've definitely had like the weekend of a lifetime. Over the past few days, I turned 18. I committed to Iowa, and I was just given another baby sister. My sister was just born.
Your dad was telling me of that. Congratulations. What's her
Yeah,
name?
thank you. Her name is Eva.
Eva. I love it. Is she going to be a future all-star as well?
We're hoping so if my mom lets her.
No, I love hearing. So, you're a woman that loves to chase history, but before we get into the history you're about to create, can we get a little bit of a history lesson on Val Solerio? How did you get up to this point, committing to such a high-powered team?
I can honestly tell you that I never thought this would actually be possible for me. Whenever I first started wrestling, I was about 7 years old, and I really only started wrestling because my little brother started wrestling. So I kind of like followed him and chased him around, and eventually, the coaches were like, hey, like, I think she's kind of decent. Like, they contacted my dad, and they were like, I think you actually have something to work with here. So from then on, it's just been wrestling forever, but it wasn't always like super smooth sailing. I know in 8th grade I wanted to quit wrestling. In 9th grade I also wanted to quit wrestling. So it was like a rough ride for me. It wasn't exactly all glamorous and, perfect the way people would think it would be. But eventually, like, after winning my first Fargo title my freshman year, I just kind of started grinding and working and working and working, and eventually made it to the point to where I am now to be able to commit to a college like this.
So where did you start wrestling? Your dad was telling me that you were actually started in Alabama. Like you've been all over the map, right?
Oh, something like that, yeah. I'm actually from a small town called Eufaula, Alabama. And I started wrestling in Pennsylvania, but my journey started in Alabama. I lived there, and so I started doing jujitsu out of Columbus, Georgia, and then wrestling out of a club in Columbus, Georgia called Icon. And as I got older, we moved to Pennsylvania, and so I started wrestling for Kenny McMillan's youth program there, and I spent a few years there. Then I had to move back to Alabama, but Alabama didn't have, women's wrestling at the time, and the area that I lived in didn't have wrestling at all. At the time, COVID was going on, so there really wasn't anywhere for us to go. I wasn't super sure I even wanted to wrestle in high school. I wasn't really that great. I wasn't good at all. But, Florida was wide open, completely wide open during COVID. So my dad decided to move to Panama City Beach because that's where, he would travel to a lot as a kid. That's where we always did all of our family vacations. And so we moved there, and, I just started wrestling there. Not by choice. My dad had kind of forced me to, which I'm so glad he did because it led to so many great things in the long run. But that's kind of how I ended up in Florida. And, from there, it's just been wrestling ever since.
Man, your dad sounds like me. I'm trying to like force my kid, not force my kid. I hate saying that, but like he's into soccer, but he shows so much potential in wrestling, but I got to let him do his thing.
I was bribed. Like Happy Meals after practice, every single practice, or I wasn't going.
Dude, I did that with my kids when I got them started in it. This place over in Niceville called the Honeybee Ice Cream and Arcade, and every day after practice. So it's weird to say that you weren't that great. So you go from feeling like you're not that great to winning Fargo state championships, all that. Where did the change happen?
Honestly, wrestling, I'm a first-time wrestler in my family. We never really had anyone wrestling, so everything that we've done to this point has kind of been like trial and error. In 8th grade, I didn't like wrestling. I didn't want to do it. I wasn't that good at it. And in, high school in Florida, the lowest weight class for women was 100 pounds. I wasn't exactly a 100-pounder my freshman year. I was really, really small. So I wasn't even a 100-pounder. Like, I would wrestle all the 100-pound girls in the area, and I would work so hard, but I couldn't win a tournament. Like, I couldn't for the life of me win a tournament. I had no idea what the problem was. But, my dad was like, it's looking like you're just, like, smaller than people out there. Like, you're not as strong. smaller. Like you're just kind of getting tossed around a little bit. And I was like, oh dang, I gotta get bigger. That year was the first year we found out Fargo had a 94-pound division. So I went and I wrestled 94 pounds, and I saw that I was actually like the same size as everyone else there. And I ended up winning it. So then I started to realize like, wow, like maybe I am kind of good. And I was just like in the wrong weight class. But after I won Fargo, it's just been a lot of ups and downs. My dad's like a really bad big brother to where he'll like pick a fight or like pick a match and be like, oh yeah, she's got that, she's got that. And then I go in and I like totally do not got that time. That's how I ended up at Who's Number One the first time actually. After Fargo, my dad was like, my daughter could go 94 at Who's Number One. She could go against the world champion. She could go against her. And I was just sitting there like just so happy that I had won Fargo. I had no idea what Who's Number One even was. And my dad was like, yeah, no, my daughter can do it. She can do it. I couldn't do it. Not that time.
I
Lights,
mean,
camera, action got to me.
to be fair, like I was watching it, you were doing pretty well. It's not like you were out of that match at all. I thought you were about to win it the entire time. It just looked like things happen, but that's just one man's opinion on it.
Oh, if I'm being honest with you, I don't even remember the match. Like people bring it up and I'm like, guys, I completely blacked out. Like I have no idea what happened. To this day, I'm scared to rewatch it, but like I also have no idea what happened. I have no recollection of it, which is crazy because like just a couple weeks later, I had to wrestle that same girl at Super 32 and I ended up teching her. And I was like, why couldn't I just get this together like 3 weeks ago?
It happens sometimes, you needed that. You needed that, like you said, lights, camera, action, you needed that big moment, and then, once you got it done, it's like, all right, lesson learned. So what? How did you feel being the first FHSAA girls state champion? I know Coach Skipper was very big on you when you were thinking about going 100, 105, and he's, Coach Skipper, who wanted to be on as a guest host today. He says congratulations. He is so proud of you. But he was very insistent on being the first. He's big on history. How
Yeah.
did you approach that when he was trying to push that idea on you?
Oh, well, he didn't really have to push much of an idea on me. It was more like, there's a first state title to be won. I want to be the one to win it. And Skipper had that same idea. So we just kind of worked together all season long to kind of achieve that goal. And in the end, we met it. It just felt unreal being the first state champion. The year before, I actually didn't win the state championship. I was injured. I ended up getting carried off the mat and, forfeiting all the way down to fourth place. So the next year I went in super nervous, out of my mind. Like I was puking before my matches. I was like crying, puking. I couldn't go to sleep. And Skipper was just there throughout like every single step of the way. So it felt so good to win the first state title. Like it felt like everything we had worked for all season long, every single practice had finally paid off.
It's weird that you're so nervous because you weren't really challenged, I don't believe. Looking at your resume and feeling like you're like, oh, I was nervous for this, where, to me, I was looking on paper, I'm like, oh, I don't see anybody challenging her.
Yeah, that's the thing. On paper, it looks one way, but then whenever I'm actually there, it's like completely another. Like on paper, you see, and it's like, oh, well, she pinned the girl in the state finals in the first period. Like, that must mean she like completely like smoked her. And that wasn't the case at all. I actually go into matches like super prepared. Like, I've never wrestled anyone just like out of like flimsiness, like, let's just wrestle. Like, that was a whole season of like, film watching and preparing for like certain tendencies and just I happened to have my game plan work. I had a feeling like I had a feeling the girl was gonna like reach back and try to do a head and arm. So all season long I had like practiced leaving my head out as bait and then pulling it back and finishing with a bar. That way whenever it happened in the state finals, like I put my head there in position and the second she reached back, I stuck in my bar and I ended up pinning her in that move. And so it was just like a lot of preparation that kind of made it look that way. But in all reality, like that was a season's worth of like preparing for a singular match.
Right. I do. I love it. That's how it comes. That's what those long hours are for, is preparing for those one moments. We were just talking about our kids out the other day. So you win a first state title, and then you go back up to Pennsylvania. I think you said your dad had transferred jobs, or I know it was something like that. What was it like
Yeah.
going back up to your old stomping grounds?
Well, honestly, it was super welcoming. I loved it a lot. I loved being at Kinemac. I love being in Pennsylvania. It's just where I started everything. So being back there just it's like a sense of home. Like the community is so tightly and woven together. The coaches have known me since I was a little kid. the guys that I wrestle with there, all in different weight classes now. Like some of them are still 106, other of them are like the heavyweight now, which is kind of crazy because you're all wrestling at the same like weight class at like 75 pounds. But it was just like it felt right to me. It felt right, anyways. It was like this is my family. This is where I started wrestling. You know, this is kind of where I wanted to end wrestling.
Yeah, when speaking of ending, you're trying to be chase history again and be the first ever sanctioned PA's women's state champion, doing it twice in two different states. How are you looking forward to that challenge?
Oh, honestly, I'm looking forward to it a lot, but I trust the environment up there. I trust Coach Slack. I trust the Kid McMillan staff and all the clubs around there. I have a lot of faith that I'll be able to pull it off again. And, you know, if not, I'm sure it'll be an amazing journey the whole way through.
Yeah, and I was talking to your dad on Facebook about it, and it's he expressed like how sad you guys are to leave the area, or you are to leave the area, and how much of a home it
Yeah.
is. I had the same feeling whenever I was halfway through high school, just going over to Swanee, right, trying to find state level competition, and you're on, this international, national level. It's hard to find partners, and it's not even a knock against the area. It's just, a testament to where you're at. Similar to Jace Paradon going from Jacksonville down to Lake Highland Prep. You're just trying to find that iron that's going to sharpen you more.
Yeah.
Which going into the segue and into this one, you're not going to find anybody able to sharpen you better than Coach Clarissa Chun over at Iowa Hawkeyes. How did you come to that decision? I know you were keeping everybody very captivated with your countrywide tour. How did you land on Iowa?
Well, I had narrowed my schools down to like three schools that I knew I would want to visit and go to. I narrowed it down to King University in Bristol, Tennessee, and then Naperville, Illinois, North Central College, and then of course Iowa City, the Hawkeyes. And I just like kind of took every visit. I explored the coaches, the options, the other girls that were there, the training partners, the environment I was in, and ultimately just decided that the University of Iowa was where I wanted to be. Clarissa is very young and very small, and I just don't see any better way to learn from a coach than to have someone that can actually wrestle with you and stop you at every point and tell you, like, okay, we need to go here, here, here. Like, I felt you do this, this, and this. Not only that, but the amount of partners that I have there is like insane compared to any other wrestling room.
Now a word about rapid brackets and Warzone from Jason Westlaker.
If you're on the fence about trying something new, you'll find that this is going to be better for your wrestling market to run a tournament with this software, and it's going to be better for you as a tournament host with much less confusion. Everybody wins if you try this out. So that would be my message. If you're a tournament director, you don't have much to lose by trying this.
Hey, North Florida wrestling fans, are you looking to stay involved in wrestling after you're done? Have you taken a little while off and are looking to get back into it? Well, there is no better way than contacting your local officials association and learning how to be a referee today. Great opportunity to make a little bit of cash and stay involved in the youth wrestling scene here in North Florida and watch it continue to rise. Contact us here at the North Florida. We actually have a special guest in the studio to ask a couple questions. She is going to be the next Val Solerio, or even better if she stays on this track. It's Kendall Stomp Knocker Haney from Grappling House, one of my favorite wrestlers in the area because I have never seen anybody work, as hard as she does, put so much time and energy into it. But we have her on to ask you a couple questions as a young female wrestler coming into the high school realm. Go ahead, Kendall.
Wanted to ask you, do you like to wrestle boys or girls more?
I will say it depends. I used to like wrestling boys a lot more whenever I was younger and smaller. Now that I've reached high school and, wrestling is everyone from all grade levels, I've decided that I do like wrestling with girls a little bit more. It's just safer for me. I feel like I'm not overpowered with like strength and testosterone and speed. And whenever I wrestle girls, it's like you get more of an even matchup. You get to like learn more things or go at a pace to where, you kind of know you're not going to get injured. And if you do, ultimately then most of the time it is your fault. But wrestling guys, I feel like you get injured a lot more, and a lot of the time it's no one's fault. It's just, what happens.
Do you think wrestling has improved your wrist, like doing better? Do you think wrestling boys has made you better?
I do, actually. I think wrestling boys, for as long as I did, made me a lot better. I think I got used to like a lot more aggression and speed and strength, and kind of like how to troubleshoot, like, oh, this guy's a lot stronger than me, but I feel like I'm a better and more technical wrestler. It kind of teaches you how to like hold back on certain things or how to like readjust. Like if I know I'm going against a guy and he's a lot stronger than me, then it looks like I'm not going to be able to tie up that match, I might have to stay low and, work the outside. And, vice versa, if a guy's a lot faster than me but I feel stronger, then I know I'm going to have to like tie up and keep the match, at arm's distance. I think it's like helped put me through a lot of situations that I wouldn't have been put in if I wrestled strictly girls.
Yeah. Who's your toughest match that you've ever won against?
Let's see, my toughest match that I've ever won against. Actually, I have a lot of those actually. To this day, I think I would say the toughest matches I've ever had have been against, I want to say Katie Valdez from Colorado. Every time we've wrestled, it's just been like back and forth and back and forth, and the points end up looking like something out of a football game. Like the points just get completely out of hand. And she's such a good wrestler, and I love wrestling her. But it's kind of weird because she's actually really sweet. So I get to talk to her whenever we're at the podium or like after we wrestle. We kind of have this silent respect for each other to where we won't speak to each other before we wrestle. You just kind of like look at each other and like kind of give each other like a little nod or something, might give each other a little fist bump. And then when we wrestle, it's like cats and dogs. It's like you're watching like the Tasmanian Devil. Like it's so crazy. She's definitely like my toughest match. Every single time I see her name on a bracket, I'm like, oh God, please give me the ability to like toughen this.
So actually, I have one that kind of comes off of Kendall's question. So obviously you're very skilled. You can handle yourself against boys, but you're saying you kind of as you get older, you're seeing that it's probably more better for you to wrestle girls. At what point do you feel like it's about time for people to make that, or girls to make that switch to be like, okay, now just for like you said, injuries alone, like what time do you think, all right, hey, it's time to start focusing on wrestling with girls only, people same strength, same body abilities? What's your thoughts on that?
I think high school is a good time to focus on, competing against strictly girls. Practicing wise, I think I still benefit from like drilling and stuff with guys, but I don't see it being as beneficial for me to like, wrestle and compete against them. I feel like that's when I get the most injured. That's when I'm at most risk for injury. I recommend, obviously I'm no expert, but I do recommend that once, girls hit high school, they do kind of make that transition into competing against only girls. But, wrestling with whoever they want as long as they're being safe about it. From my experience, anyways, that's what I take away from it.
Yeah, that's because it's so hard, especially in a wrestling room. If you're practicing and you got just good partners around, it's for me. I'm always wrestling. Like I'm getting toward the end to where I can't, roll around as well with these kids, and I know it's coming up short. But like anytime in a wrestling room, I can't help it. I grab somebody, and I'm like, all right, let's start wrestling, let's start rolling around. Like so, I like the clarity on that. And so with you going from folk style or going from high school folk style to freestyle in college. How do you feel about that? Do you like folk style more than freestyle? Do you like freestyle more than folk style? Do you wish that there was a folk style in college? What are your thoughts on that transition?
I will say that, I like freestyle a lot more than folk style, just a lot more. And I think, going from folk style to freestyle is very different. In folk style, you focus a lot on being able to get up from bottom or like hold someone down. Whereas in freestyle, if, you're down, you kind of focus on staying down for a little while. Or if you're on top, you focus on trying to score the next points. But ultimately, everything is, neutral. But I do think that they go hand in hand and they help each other. So I really don't see anything wrong with like wrestling my season in folk style and then like transitioning into freestyle. If anything, there's just like minor details. Like I don't prefer wrestling folk style because now I'm a lot more focused in freestyle. So going from like, oh dang, I just got taken down, like I need a belly out, to like, oh, I just got taken down, I need to spring back up to my feet and try to get away, is a big transition whenever you take one a lot more seriously than taking the other. But I think it's really important to do both and be like really good at them. That way you can be a whole well-rounded wrestler. Because a lot of the times the turns that I get in freestyle aren't your traditional freestyle turns. Like it will end up being a lot of folk style turns, like whether it's, a tilt, a bar, a half, or just, I think all of it goes hand in hand. So it's important to have both, but I do ultimately prefer freestyle. Going
All
into
right.
college though, I will say I'm a lot happier that it's going to be all freestyle.
Speaking of a master of styles, I saw the boxing video out just recently. Is there a UFC run? Is Valerie Solerio a future UFC champion?
We'll see, we'll see. I've kind of always done like boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, jujitsu, throughout my whole life. My dad's like a big MMA guy. Like I said, he's like a bad big brother. Like if there's a fight to pick, if there's a match to pick, like he's gonna try to pick it. If there's a sport to do, he's gonna try to get me in it. It'll be like, oh, she can do it, she can do it. And even if I can't do it, like he'll find a way for me to do it.
You
I
sound
don't
like
know. I feel like very undersized. I come into that size issue a lot to where, even right now I wrestle at 100 pounds and in college I'll be 101. The lowest UFC weight class would be like 115.
yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see how things go. But, I'll never stop training everything and see, where things take me.
I have an MMA podcast where we're talking about that, and we were just talking about how there's a over in Singapore one championship. They have a superstar of a personality in Stamp Fairtax, and I'm hoping that kind of some superstar level like that can transition over to America and convince the UFC to bring in a lighter weight class, because I think it'd be incredibly entertaining. They're so fast, so technical. I don't want to get into that. That's a whole other podcast. What do you have to say to the North Florida wrestling community? I know it's been very big in your life, and I'm sure you're sad to leave it, but you have your own pastures to go and farm. What do you say to the North Florida wrestling fans?
I just say thank you for everything they've done for me. I think everyone in North Florida has played a really big part in my wrestling, whether it's like, contributing support or just like saying something nice or, spreading videos or like different things about me. Like, it's just always been a really supportive community. I'm kind of sad to go, very sad to go, but, I will be coming back. And so, anyone that has like any girls in the area at all ages, anytime I'm back, I would love to like get any kind of like a clinic, a little thing going to where everyone can bring all the girls from North Florida together and we can all just get to wrestling together. I feel like that's a big step in growing women's wrestling. Kids of all ages. I think girls, it's important for them to know that there's other girls in their area and they're not the only one. That's an issue I faced a lot as a kid, being the only girl around. And I think, our next generation doesn't have to feel that way.
Hey, you know what? Anytime you come back and want to run a clinic, you let me know. The Niceville Wrestling Academy facility is yours whenever you want it. But thank you so much, Valerie, for being on. Kendall, thank you for so much for coming on, asking your questions. We look forward to having you in this exact spot for your commitment in about 4 years to find out what school you're going on. You guys have a great one. Thank you so much for being on.